April 1912. The world stood on the brink of a new era. Technology was advancing at an astonishing pace. Industry was booming, and mankind believed it had conquered nature. Then came a ship that would challenge that belief forever. This is the story of the RMS Titanic, its ambition, its maiden voyage, and the tragedy that still haunts the world more than a century later. At the start of the 20th century, fierce competition ruled the transatlantic shipping industry. Luxury and speed were everything. The British shipping company White Star Line wanted to dominate the Atlantic trade route. Rather than building the fastest ships, they chose to build the largest and most luxurious ever seen. Titanic was constructed in Belfast, Ireland, at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. When completed, she was nearly 882 feet long, longer than 3 football fields, and weighed over 46,000 tons. She featured electric elevators, a heated swimming pool, a squash court, a grand staircase of oak and wrought iron, lavish first-class suites rivaling the finest hotels. The press quickly labeled her unsinkable, though that claim was more myth than official statement. Still, confidence in her design was immense. Titanic was equipped with 16 watertight compartments, designed to keep her afloat even if 4 were flooded. No one imagined she would face damage beyond that limit.
Maiden voyage of Titanic must make headlines.
On April 10, 1912, Titanic departed Southampton, England. Her captain, Edward Smith, was one of the most experienced seamen of his time. This was to be his final voyage before retirement. Titanic stopped briefly in Cherbourg, France and Queenstown, now Cove, Ireland, picking up additional passengers before heading into the open Atlantic. On board were more than 2,200 people, a mix of wealthy elites, hopeful immigrants, and hard-working crew members. Among them, millionaire businessman John Jacob Astor IV, socialite Margaret Brown, later known as the unsinkable Molly Brown Isidore, and Ida Strauss, co-owners of Macy's. The ship was divided by class elegance, luxury, and privacy, comfort and refinement. Modest but clean accommodations for immigrants seeking new lives in America. For many in third class, Titanic was a bridge to hope. For others, it was a floating palace. For 4 days, life aboard Titanic was peaceful. Passengers dined on extravagant meals, up to 11 courses in first class. Children played on deck. Musicians performed in the evenings. The sea was calm. But beneath the luxury, there were warning signs. Titanic received multiple wireless messages from nearby ships reporting heavy ice fields ahead. One of those warnings came from the SS Californian, which reported being stopped by ice. However, Titanic continued at near full speed, about 22 knots. At the time, it was common practice. Ships rarely slowed for ice unless visibility was poor. And that night, the sky was clear. What no one realized was that the sea was unusually calm, making icebergs harder to spot because there were no waves breaking at their base.
That was the last time Titanic ever saw daylight.
April 14, 1912, 11:40 p.m. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee spotted a dark mass directly ahead. "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch ordered hard a starboard, and engines reversed. It was too late. The iceberg scraped along Titanic's starboard side for roughly 10 seconds, opening a series of narrow gashes below the waterline across 6 compartments. Not a dramatic collision. No massive crash, just a shudder. At first, many passengers barely noticed, but below deck, seawater began pouring in. Ship designer Thomas Andrews quickly assessed the damage. Titanic could survive 4 flooded compartments. 6 were breached. Titanic carried 20 lifeboats. They could hold about 1,178 people. There were over 2,200 on board. Why so few? At the time, maritime safety regulations were outdated. Lifeboat requirements were based on ship tonnage, not passenger capacity. Titanic technically exceeded legal requirements. Still, there weren't enough. At 12:45 a.m., lifeboats began launching. The order, women and children first. Confusion spread. Many passengers did not believe the ship was in real danger. Some lifeboats were launched half-empty. Third-class passengers struggled to navigate the ship's confusing corridors. Language barriers and locked gates may have slowed their access to the boat deck. As the ship tilted, panic began to replace disbelief. By 2 a.m., the bow was submerged. The stern lifted high into the freezing Atlantic air. The band continued playing, reportedly, "Nearer, My God, to Thee." At approximately 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912, Titanic broke apart and disappeared beneath the surface. More than 1,500 people remained in the icy water. The temperature was about 28 degrees Fahrenheit, -2 degrees Celsius. Most victims died from hypothermia within 15 to 30 minutes.
1,500 people went into the sea when Titanic sank from under us.
The distress signals were heard by the RMS Carpathia, captained by Arthur Rostron. Carpathia raced through ice fields at full speed. She arrived around 4 a.m. Only about 705 people survived. Over 1,500 perished. It remains one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. The sinking shocked the world. Investigations were launched in both the United States and Britain. Major reforms followed. Lifeboats for all passengers became mandatory. Continuous radio watch was required. The International Ice Patrol was established. Decades later, in 1985, Titanic's wreck was discovered by oceanographer Robert Ballard in the North Atlantic, lying about 12,500 feet below the surface. Today, the wreck continues to deteriorate under deep-sea bacteria and pressure. Why Titanic still captivates us. More than a century later, Titanic remains one of the most studied and discussed disasters in history because it represents human ambition class division, heroism and sacrifice, the limits of technology, the fragility of life. It has inspired countless books, research expeditions, and of course the 1997 film Titanic, directed by James Cameron, which introduced the story to a new generation. But beyond the romance and dramatization, the real story remains even more powerful. It's about real people, real dreams, real loss. The unanswered questions. Even today, historians debate, could Titanic have survived if it had hit the iceberg head-on? Would more lifeboats have saved significantly more lives? Did nearby ships fail to respond in time? Was overconfidence the true cause of the tragedy? Every expedition reveals new details, but some mysteries remain buried in the Atlantic. On that cold April night, the world learned a harsh lesson. No creation of man is unsinkable. Titanic was more than a ship. It was a symbol of ambition, of hope, and of humility before nature. Over a century later, her story still echoes across the ocean floor. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe the tragedy could have been prevented? Was it human error, fate, or simply a chain of unfortunate events? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this documentary and want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because history is full of stories waiting to be told.